And our journey through Sky Song is very, very nearly at an end, so here goes with chapter 35. The Ice Queen stood up from the organ. "Not possible," she murmured, and Balapan dived low and landed on Eska's shoulder, and, with the strength of the eagle willing her on, Eska advanced through the hall. The Ice Queen turned to Slither. "Find that boy, just in case he's lurking, and kill him while I destroy the eagle." The fur and feather battle cries clamoured again, and Eska, holding the frost horn in front of her like a shield, strode on towards the Ice Queen. She had no voice, but she had an eagle on her shoulder and a heart full of courage, so she kept walking, veering around the organ to the heap of shattered ice where Blue and Pebble had once been. "Soon the ice will melt," the Queen cried. "You've lost your friends forever." But Eska wasn't listening, and she raised the frost horn to her lips and thought of Blue and Pebble, of the little girl who had left her home to follow her brother through every possible danger, and the fox pup who had tried his hardest to protect her in the bay. She blew gently this time, and the horn sung a different note again. Not the sky song or the battle summoning. Instead, the sound was like clouds rippling, and it stirred the crystals on the floor, whisking them into the air until it swirled and glimmered. The Ice Queen rushed forward, but a shape was already emerging within the crystals, only it wasn't a statue anymore. In its place stood a girl with ruddy cheeks and a bundle of fur wriggling in her arms. The Ice Queen raised her staff and shrieked, "You will not undo my powers, Eska!" And black sparks shot out from her staff, for Eska stood in front of Blue, and as she held the frost horn in front of her, the sparks bounced off and fizzled on the floor. "We, Eska's tribe," Blue shouted, no longer scared now that Eska was there to guard her. She stroked Peggle's head. "We, her friends, and we never give up." And Balapan cried out from Eska's shoulder, and the Ice Queen stalked closer. "Except Flynn," she said quietly. "He seemed very happy to run away earlier." Blue shook her head. "Flint fight for Eska, always looking for her, always fighting for her, never leave." And the Ice Queen sighed. Blind as well as stupid. And there was a scuffle of footsteps from the door. "Come, Slither," the Queen called. But it was not the shaman who emerged from the passageway. It was Flint. The Ice Queen snorted. "If you tie Slither up with the willow snatch, he'll break his curse in an instant." And Flint raised an eyebrow. "Not if the willow snatch is drenched in water gathered from a whirlpool. That'll bind him for months on end," he paused. "You didn't think I'd enter your palace without a few inventions up my sleeve, did you?" Eyes wild, the Ice Queen raised her staff towards Flint, but at that moment Blue rushed forward and kicked the Queen in the back of the legs. Flint's jaw dropped. His sister, alive and full of fight! Black sparks ricocheted off the walls as the Queen stumbled to her knees, but it gave Flint the chance he needed to dart towards the trees, and grabbing Blue by the hand he raced past. He thrust a small wooden box at Eska, and from her shoulders Balapan croaked. "Your memories," Flint panted as Pebble nuzzled around his legs. "I searched the whole palace until I found this in a throne turret." Eska could barely believe what she was hearing. Flint hadn't abandoned her. He'd gone to find her past. "When I saw the Ice Queen's power over Blue," Flint cried, "I realised we needed all the help we could get to beat her. You need to remember who you are, Eska, if you're going to take back your voice." The Ice Queen was on her feet again, her staff aimed at Eska. "You won't be able to open it," she shrieked. "There is no key. I held it at the bottom of the ocean the day I captured you." And Eska's skin trembled, but Flint held up his anything nurse to the keyhole and twisted it this way and that. The Ice Queen strode forward, and through the power of the frost horn was enough to keep the black sparks of her magic away from the group. A trail of sweat inched down Eska's back as Flint worked the knife in the lock. "Come on, brother Bluehost, quick, quick!" And Flint fumbled with the knife, but the Ice Queen was upon them now, brandishing her staff, and then, just as he brought it down, a shadow fell across her, and Eska glanced up to see a large shape had filled one of the palace arches, and she realised she recognised those broad shoulders and wide, set legs. White fur! The Erkin Bear leapt into the room and bounded across the floor towards the Ice Queen. She took a few steps backwards and then remembered herself and aimed her staff at the raging bear. A burst of sparks shot out and the Erkin Bear tumbled backwards, but it was up again in seconds. Flint worked harder with his knife until there was a click, and as White Fur launched himself at the Ice Queen, Eska pushed the wooden lid open. The swirl of colours twisted towards her as they fell about her face, and it felt to Eska as if she was looking at a rainbow through the mist, but then the mist seemed to fade and the colours became stronger, and finally Eska saw her path clearly. She was sledging in the Negercliffs with her ma, and she was hunting caribou in the driftlands with her pa. Next she was making necklaces from river quartz with her parents, and she was running hand in hand with them across the foothills to catch a glimpse of a golden eagle. This was her past, a lifetime out in the wild with two people who loved her more than she could have hoped for. And suddenly knowing her place, knowing her beginnings and all the things that had come after her, made her grip the frost horn harder. White Fur wrestled with the Ice Queen, a whirl of claws and nails and fizzing black sparks, and Eska saw them like that a more painful memory surfaced. The last moments with her parents on the driftlands. her ma crying out for her as the Wolverines closed in, the Erkin Bear trying to set things right, and then a Tusk warrior dragging her and her pa to Winterfang. Whitefur hadn't managed to hold the Ice Queen back then, but now he fought with a vengeance, and as he thumped an enormous paw across the Queen's chest, pinning her to the ground, he growled at Esker. And Esker could hear the words in the growl because it was the language of those who wandered with the wild. "Take what is rightfully yours," it said. "Take back your voice." And Esker stormed towards the Ice Queen while Flint shoved Blue behind him and took on the stream of Tusk guards pouring through the arches. Whitefur winced as the Ice Queen struggled beneath him and sent a flesh flurry of sparks into his side. But Esker was running now, and she swung the frost horn at the Ice Queen's staff. The sceptre broke apart on impact, shattering into fragments of black ice, and the Queen gasped as the ice melted before her eyes and a golden mist seeped from her lips. It drifted into the hall and settled inside the baubles on the trees until all of them shone once again. The Ice Queen raised a hand to her mouth, but an even brighter mist was slipping through her fingers now, a mist that burned as gold as Balapan's eyes. It swirled into the hall, and Esker stood completely still as she breathed her voice back inside her. Leaving Flint to fight the last of the Tusk guards, Esker sped across the room and leapt up to an open arch. Balapan glided to her shoulder, and they looked at the fight below, a frenzy of blizzard balls, ice spears, and willow-snatching javelins. Then Esker held the frost horn high, and desperately hoping she could remember its song, she threw her newfound voice into the night. At first she sang the low, clear note, the one that had sounded like an owl's hoot. Then she launched into the rippling melody, and her song rose like bubbles from the depths of the sea. A few of the Tusk guards looked up at their weapons suddenly limp in their hands, and Esker noticed that their expressions had changed. They were no longer blank and ice-eyed. Their faces were filled with shock and shame and something like hope, and though Esker dared not stop singing, she wondered whether the Ice Queen's hold over her Tusk army was gradually weakening. Esker let the melody grow louder, stronger, and as the sky song burst out, she could feel the power of the mountains and the forests of the glaciers stirring inside her. More Tusk guards stopped fighting, the Wolverines and the Erkenbears broke apart, and Esker saw Rook, her face brighter and kinder than it had been in the Lost Chambers, push her way through the crowds towards the palace until she was standing alongside Jay and Tomkin, and Esker blinked. Even the Tusk guards, frozen by blizzard balls and imprisoned by willow snatch, were breaking free from the magic that had bound them and looking up to her with eager faces. All the tribes were listening now because the Ice Queen's curses had worn off. Esker raised her eyes to the stars, to the mighty sky guards listening from above, and she sang the last part of the sky song. The melody filled in longing and heart and infinite wonder, and the sound of her voice swirled up into the night, and the northern lights began to dance. Balapan leapt from her shoulder, wheeling into the colours that spilled into rings and halos across the dark, and Esker knew then that no one in Erkenworld could doubt the presence of magic. The sky gods were up there, and they were dancing for every tribe to see. Esker cleared her throat. "A few weeks ago I was nothing more than a prisoner here at Winterfang," she cried. "The Ice Queen locked me in a music box and told me I was cursed. She stole my parents, she stole my memories, and then she stole my voice." Esker took a deep breath. "But together with the bravest inventor I know, I escaped and formed a tribe, and though it wasn't made up of warriors or people who dressed and thought the same way, it was enough. Because we were brave and we kept hoping, and though the Ice Queen threw everything she had at us, Tusk guards, cursed wolves, mountain ghouls, and thunder ghosts, we threw more back." Balapan settled on her shoulder and ruffled her feathers. "We kept going when everything fell apart. We trusted strangers even when we didn't have a plan." She paused. "And when the Ice Queen tried to silence us, we shouted louder." And she raised the frost horn high. "For almost a year we've lived in a kingdom shrunk to whispers, in a place where tribes hide from one another in fear. But that is not our Erkenwald. It's time to reclaim our kingdom." There was a deafening roar from below as all three tribes cheered Esker on. She spun around to see the last of the Tusk guards sitting on the floor, shaking their head as if waking from a terrible dream, and she knew that the Ice Queen's curse had been broken once and for all. She watched as Flynn raked his anything knife through the baubles that hung from the trees, and they crashed into the ground, finally free from the Ice Queen's enchantment, and as Blue stamped them into tiny pieces, the golden glow of the imprisoned voices drifted through the palace towards the ice towers. Whitefur was slumped over the Ice Queen, and his weight held her still, but as Esker approached, clasping the frost horn tight, the Ice Queen's voice trickled out. "You and I could work together, Esker. Two great voices with the power to—" Esker didn't wait for any more. The Ice Queen was weak as a rag doll now. Her power had been drained, and Esker dragged her to her feet before shoving her towards the music box. She forced the Queen onto the pedestal, and then with Flint's help she hauled the glass dome over the top and turned the small black key again and again, faster and faster, until her whole arm ached. Music began, a clash of discordant notes, and this time, and very slowly, the Ice Queen's body began to break apart into tiny shards of ice. Moments later, all that was left was a gown of frozen tears. Eska rushed back to Whitefire and bent down beside him. "Thank you," she whispered. "You held the ice cream back so that I could call the tribes together." The Erkin Bear didn't reply, and Eska's hands stilled over his fur. "White fur?" She leaned over so she could see his other side, and it was red beyond repair, and only then did Eska realise what had happened. While she had been united the tribes, Whitefur had been dying. Flint and Blue gathered close. "I thought Erkin Bears couldn't die," Eska said in a small voice. "I thought Whitefur was beyond the ice cream's dark magic." And she let her head rest against the bear as the tears began to fall, and Flint and Blue did the same. "He fought for you out of the Driftlands last year," Flint's voice was choked, "and he fought inside the palace tonight. He would have fought again, Eska, because his heart was good and true and brave." "Erkin Bears," Eska said through the tears. "I remember my past stories about them now. Wanderers call them ever-wandering ones. They believe that even after they die, their souls speak to us when the fresh snow falls." And though the thought of being able to speak to Whitefur again sent a glimmer of hope through Eska, it didn't ease the pain, and she cried on for the life of her old friend. They lay with their arms around the Erkin Bear for a while longer, and then the sound of pummeling footsteps filled the palace. "The prisoners in the ice towers, they've been freed," Flint breathed, forcing himself to his feet. "Ma!" He rushed from the hall, hand in hand with Blue, and Eska would have followed, had her ears not snagged on another sound. "Eska?" Eska's legs felt suddenly weak beneath her, and her breath scudded through her throat because she recognised that voice. "Pa?" she whispered, and then louder as she rushed towards the arches, and the call had come from Pa. Grabbing an abandoned knife from the ground, Eska leapt out on the palace wall, and she dug the knife into the ice there and used it to clamber up to the top of the highest dome, and then she stood up tall. "Pa!" Tomkin and Blade had scaled the ice towers and hacked open the door that blocked the prisoners in, and now men, women, uncles, aunts and grandparents were pouring across the bridges that connected the towers to the palace and rushing into the arms of their children. Eska's eyes flitted between the crowds when they fixed on a tall man with broad shoulders who wore the furs of a silver wolf. He was faster than the others over the bridges, but he didn't rush into the palace. He grabbed a spear from the ground, snapped it in two, and they dug the spikes into the ice dome and began to climb towards his daughter. Eska felt her heart shake. "Pa!" Wolftooth hauled himself up to the top of the dome, but he didn't stop to gather his breath. He rushed forward and scooped her up in her arms. "My little girl," he said, "my precious little girl." And his Balapan called out from the velvet sky above. Eska held on to her Pa. So there is one more thing to read tomorrow, and that is the epilogue. So join me to find out what happens right at the end and how Eska finds her place.